If you're an attorney who's used AI or heard anything about artificial intelligence, you've no doubt heard the horror stories about hallucinations. You've seen attorneys file real briefs in federal court that had completely made up cases. You've seen them get sanctioned and embarrassed. And that might have scared you off from using AI, or it might have made you think that the tool is completely useless for the law because the error rate is just way too high. I'm here to argue that off-the-shelf tools like Claude and ChatGPT that aren't even legal specific already are good enough for professional use by lawyers, and that hallucination rates are actually more of a user issue than they are a tool issue. That is, you could have two separate users of ChatGPT. One of them has a very low hallucination rate, the other has a very high hallucination rate, and it has absolutely nothing to do with how the AI actually works in the first place. Now, I'm actually not a lawyer myself. I've never been to law school. I spent over 5 years in software development. I've done a lot of AI coding, especially in the past year. I heavily use tools like Claude Code and Codex. And like a lot of other software developers, it's immediately obvious to me how useful it is in my domain and how much of a productivity boost I really get. And I wanted to share some of my frameworks for thinking about hallucinations with you, an attorney, because I think that's really what's missing for unlocking the potential of these tools. Now, let's get into the cause of hallucinations in the first place. Now, AI models were trained on the internet and other sources like books. And when I say trained, you could think of that very roughly as the AI itself went in and read every page on the internet. So that's Wikipedia, that's Reddit, maybe that's stuff like Cornell Law or court listener cases. And that's where it gets its base knowledge. So if you go into a tool like Claude or ChatGPT and ask it something off the cuff, it is answering from its training data. Now, training takes months and months and months. It's very expensive. And what that means is there is a cutoff. And I believe the latest Claude models, the cutoff is probably something like January 2026. And so even if it were to know the law, whatever that means, up until 2026, it would not know anything that happened after it. So right away, if you ask it a question about something that happened in, let's say, March 2026, it is not going to be able to answer that on its own unless it's able to go and get new information. And the other thing, it's not like it read every single case. Think about what's actually on the internet, and especially what's on the public internet. Is the AI going to have a decent understanding of the US Constitution and some of the main federal statutes and some of the landmark cases that are commonly taught in law schools? Absolutely, because there's hundreds of articles written about that online. So the first type of hallucination is what I'm calling a completely made up case. So if you ask it a legal question and it spits out a case, if you did not actually connect it to a primary source, if you didn't give it anything to read, the chances that it hallucinates are extremely high. And this is what you see in the most egregious briefs that attorneys file that get them the worst sanctions, completely made up cases. And frankly, this is a very negligent way to use AI because you're not even checking its work at all. And there's no shot that it's going to be able to off the cuff just remember every single case and every single statute. Think of it like a closed book exam and you're having the AI take it. Even though it's really smart, it can't possibly remember everything like that, especially when you're really in the weeds of a niche of the law or some type of legislation, anything like that. So a completely made up case is the most egregious type of hallucination. It's also the easiest to prevent. And the way you prevent it is understand that you need to be responsible for giving it the right primary sources. And what do I mean by that? If you're getting into the weeds of, let's say, the US code, you could go onto a website like Cornell Law. And again, this is totally public. If you have access to data in Westlaw or Lexis, you would do the same type of thing. And what you want to do is make sure that the AI actually reads the primary sources. So I don't know, let's go to Coast Guard here, it's Title 14. And you can just pick different sections and chapters. And literally, you can copy and paste this stuff into Claude, and now it has access to it. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. Any tool that is going to be connected to primary sources, this is ultimately what it's going to do. It is going to copy and paste the raw text of a primary source, like a statute, like a regulation or a case, and it is going to put it into what we're calling the context window of the AI. But now, because the AI is actually getting the primary sources, and because you know it's getting the primary sources because you're the one who actually designed the prompt and put the primary source in the prompt, you've completely eliminated the chance that it just makes something up off the cuff like that. And now what the AI is doing is not going from memory. You have turned it into a reading comprehension problem. And what you need to understand about AI is they are extremely good at reading comprehension, and they can read super fast and handle really long documents. So that's what kind of makes them superhuman. You couldn't necessarily tell a human, hey, read these 10 court opinions that are really dense and organize them by issue and find the different holdings and oh, and by the way, and do it in 30 seconds. And AI actually can, and it's very, very good. And the same thing goes with court cases. So we're just on Court Listener. This is a free legal database. We can click on one of these latest opinions here. So this one's like literally from May 22nd, which I believe was 2 days ago. There's no way that the AI actually knows about this. If you were to just copy and paste it, well, I guess this one's pretty small, but if you were to copy and paste this opinion into Claude, and then you were to IRAC it, that is, ask Claude to actually do an IRAC report like you were in law school, the chances that it gives you something good are very, very high, because this is really a reading comprehension problem. And if you can turn things into a reading comprehension problem where you give Claude or ChatGPT all of the primary sources that it needs, that's how you can actually maximize your chances of it working really well. Now, I would never tell you that it can't hallucinate just because you give it all the primary sources, but you've essentially removed the most embarrassing and probably most egregious form of hallucination. Why can it hallucinate if you give it all the primary sources? Well, I mentioned earlier that it's got superhuman reading abilities. It can handle a ton of opinions. It can handle a lot of context. When we talk about context in the context of AI, we're talking about the length of the conversation, the amount of text that's actually present in the LLM's brain. It has a finite context window. And honestly, you could think of it like a health meter in a video game. Once the health meter starts to go down, the reading comprehension is going to go down as well. And if you reach a certain level of context, well, you'll still be able to chat with the LLM. That is, it won't just completely freak out. It'll continue responding to messages. If the context usage is very high, the accuracy is going to plummet dramatically. And I don't know exactly what the number is. It doesn't really matter. Just use the AI and you'll notice as the conversations get longer, they get a lot dumber. And what that means is you need to be starting new conversations, and you need to be thinking about how many opinions and how many statutes are actually in its context window right now. And am I getting to the point where hallucinations are very likely? And you'll start to have a better intuition for this as you use the tool. But really all you have to know is give it the right primary sources, make sure that there aren't too many primary sources in the context window. And if you get to the point where you do have too many, that's where you want to start thinking about new chats, start thinking about summarizing information, and overall just clearing its brain so that you give it the highest possible chance of not hallucinating. And another thing I want to say about hallucinations is a lot of legal research is kind of two separate problems. So you have a legal question that you want to answer, and what do you need to do to answer that question? Well, you got to find the relevant laws. You got to find the relevant regulations that are in your jurisdiction. You got to find the important opinions and make sure that you're reading all of them and understanding what they say and making sure that they're all good law. And you can't do any of that. That is to say, you can never get to the right conclusion if you don't actually see all of the primary sources. And finding the primary sources is actually very difficult. If you've done legal research, even if you have something like a Westlaw or Lexis, it's challenging to actually go and collect that corpus of primary sources. If you just have a blank chat box and you ask the AI some complicated legal question, you're really asking it to do two things that are distinct. Step one is you're asking it to figure out how to find the right primary sources and then go on the internet and actually collect the primary sources into a format that is readable by the LLM. That is not easy to do. And especially if you're just asking it to do it off the cuff, it is very likely going to mess that up. And then if it messes up that first step, so it misses some primary sources, doesn't understand that one of the cases was overturned, didn't run the right search queries, didn't even go to the right websites, there's no chance it's going to be able to get the right answer, because it doesn't matter what analysis it does on the wrong primary sources. So if you start thinking about it as you are responsible for collecting that corpus of primary sources, that is, you need to understand what statutes are relevant for the question, what cases you need. If you can actually collect all of that and give it to the AI and give it to the large language model, you are maximizing the chances that it can actually do something intelligent with those results. And a lot of what I see when I go online, I go on LinkedIn and see people commenting, they say their AI is hallucinating. It can't even find the right primary sources in the first place. It's not that it can't interpret. It's better at interpreting long pieces of text probably than any human. It just is not able to find the right primary sources. So really, really think about, is it getting the right primary sources? That is the most important thing. If you do that, and if you're careful about managing context, it is extremely powerful and it can find some really, really cool stuff for you. So hopefully it was helpful to hear some of my thoughts about hallucinations. What I want you guys to take away from this is that hallucination rates, one, don't make a lot of sense, and two, to the extent that they do, are user dependent, not tool dependent. Two separate users could have wildly different hallucination rates. Using ChatGPT or using Claude does not matter. And that hallucinations are never going away. If you want to get the most out of AI, don't wait for a tool to come out that's totally safe for lawyers that you never have to think about. It's never going to happen. You have to actually understand how this stuff works. You have to be the one driving it. That's how you're going to be able to get more out of it. And more importantly, you're not going to get locked into one specific tool, because this type of stuff matters no matter what tool you're using. I promise you, the more you understand about what causes hallucinations, how to manage them, that's going to give you the most flexibility and also just allow you to be the most creative with your usage of these tools. So let me know what you guys think.